Hola, ¿qué tal amigos de Venta Canadá? Estamos de nuevo con Kyle Broda de Integra Immigration Services y vamos a hablar sobre el Express Entry. Muchas personas conocen algo sobre Express Entry, saben que el año pasado inició el Express Entry, pero no sabemos qué es el Express Entry. Entonces, muchas gracias Kyle por estar con nosotros nuevamente. So, we're going to continue this webinar in English. So, what is Express Entry?
All right, well, it's a very, very, very big and important change that happened in Canadian immigration just about a year ago now. It basically changed the immigration system in terms of economic immigration. So when business people want to immigrate, now they go through the express entry process rather than the previous process, which was the application and sending everything paper based to a visa center and basically waiting in line to be processed.
And is it true? I've heard that there is a certain list of professions or occupations that Canada is looking for. Like that is what people think out there. Is that true?
Somewhat. All right, so the way that express entry works is there's a few steps involved in this. So people have to, first of all, complete the first step, which is putting together a profile for express entry. And this profile is free, of course, and on several websites, on several government websites actually, it says that there's no minimum requirement to take this first step, and that's true. However, in order to proceed to the second step, there are some minimum requirements that are important. That second step of express entry is a pool of qualified candidates. So the government would take a look at the experience, education, language, etc. of a person, and if that person meets certain criteria, then he or she would go into that pool of qualified candidates. Now, to answer your question, in terms of experience, there isn't a specific list of in-demand jobs. However, there's a knock system, it's called. And this knock system means that people have to have worked in professional jobs. So there's knock O, A, B. Now, knock O is usually executives and
Okay.
bosses of companies and that sort of thing. Knock A is usually professionals, usually university educated as well. So things like accountants and that type of work. And knock B is specialized work. So it could be something like a carpenter or
Okay.
a welder or something like that. So to answer your question though, a person's experience cannot be in something that is deemed knock C or D, which is somebody who maybe was a laborer or worked as a waiter at a restaurant or something like that. So yes, there are some specific experience requirements in terms of jobs, but it's not a very specific jobs list.
So is express entry like the only option out there for a professional to immigrate to Canada?
No, there are quite a few options. There's probably more than 80 options to explore
Oh,
with
okay.
somebody. So express entry is, of course, a really great option just because it's quick, it's very concise. And in terms of immigration consultants like us, when we assess a person's points at the beginning, we usually have a really great analysis of how well they would place in the CRS cutoff points.
Okay.
And that is actually the third step in express entry, is that when a person goes to that second step of meeting the criteria of certain immigration streams and going into that pool of qualified candidates, the third step is for them to receive an invitation to apply to Canada. Now, that invitation to apply depends on a cutoff score. So, the cutoff score for a person can have a score of 400, for example. And that is, of course, based on age, language, experience, Canadian experience, of course, as well, a lot of other things.
Okay.
And
Okay.
if the person meets the cutoff score, then they would receive an invitation to apply for immigration to Canada.
Right. For a permanent residence.
That's correct, yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
that invitation would be to apply through one of three immigration programs. And that is the Federal Skilled Worker Program, the Canadian Experience Program, and the Federal Skilled Trades Program.
Okay. And is there any special recommendation you would give to anybody interested in applying for express entry? Something that you think is paramount?
There's quite a few really important things that a person needs to do in order to have a perfect application for immigration through the express entry procedure. And one of those, of course, is to first talk with a professional to see if you actually qualify. Because otherwise, if you don't qualify, yes, you will make the first step, which is making a profile, but it's not going to proceed beyond that. And you're going to waste a year waiting to be accepted into that pool of candidates. But an immigration consultant like us or a Canadian lawyer would advise you that you don't meet the qualifications, so you wouldn't proceed. So I'd say the first really big piece of advice is to get professional help.
Assessment, right?
Professional assessment, that's exactly it. Yeah,
that way you know if you're capable of being a good candidate.
That's exactly
that's very
it.
interesting.
Mm-hmm. And of course, if express entry isn't the perfect option for a person, there are
other options, as we mentioned
other options
earlier.
to explore. That's exactly it.
Well, thank you very much, Kyle. This was a very interesting webinar. And if anybody else has any more questions about this topic or any other topics, please feel free to visit Integra Immigration's website, which you will see here on your screen, or you would have seen it throughout the video. And also an email where they can contact you is info@integraimmigrationservices.
.com.
.com.
Info@integraimmigration.com.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, well, thank you guys. Thank you for visiting us in this webinar. And please follow us so you can continue to be up to date with the most important information on immigration to Canada. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.